Hey, welcome back. Today, I have the privilege and pleasure of speaking with one of our amazing Tiny Habits coaches. He is from Alberta, Canada, Rick Gilson. Now, you're going to love Rick as much as I do it as you listen in on our conversation. But Rick is a father of six and a grandfather of seven. He is a retired career educator. And Rick, you've been a coach too, right? Do I remember that correctly?
Yes, I had the opportunity to coach somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 different football teams and basketball and volleyball teams in my life,
Oh my
all
goodness.
levels.
So you are a coach in every cell of your body. Rick, thank you so much. I know you and I have had many opportunities to have many conversations, and I always learn so much from you. And so I'm just so excited for people that are watching this or listening to this to learn from you even more so. Now, I want to kick off our conversation with a couple of questions. How did you learn about tiny habits? And then the follow up question to that is why did you decide to become a tiny habits certified coach?
It's a very interesting question. And it's great to be with you, Linda. And to your question, I've been heavily involved in kind of leadership studies and personal leadership studies. My doctorate is in leadership in an education setting, but educational leadership. And all of that always takes me back to habits and habits of mind and habits of purpose and things of that nature. So whenever I see the word habits in a book, I'm like, okay, who's writing that? And that goes way back to, I have my 1989 paperback copy of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So it goes from that. And I'm a YouTube and a TED Talk person, and I saw BJ's TED Talk. And I was like, I like all of this. And I, at the time, or right around there, as I watched that, I had another, he says, Tiny Habits. And there's another book that I was reading at the time called Atomic Habits. And I was kind of like, okay, tiny, atomic, what's the difference? What's the similarities? Okay, I'm going to read them both and see. And so I did. And in the process of reading them, discovered, hey, the ideas behind here originate with this university professor from Stanford, Dr. BJ Fogg, and I want to learn from the source. And so I signed up for the training, and that 5-day training that you can do, and tested out some habits and powered through the reading. And then I was like, oh, I want more. But at the time, I couldn't take the full time for the 5-day training and the concentrated time and resources that were required for that. And some brilliant lady named Linda Fogg and her brother BJ thought maybe we should make a self-directed training course. And I happened to be in the right place at the right time and jumped in and was the first. Even ultimately, I did not know this, but pushing you to, hey, I'm finished. What's the next course? But it just made such brilliant sense. And so I don't apologize to anybody for saying they're both good books. People ask me this all the time. What's the difference between? I've heard of, and I always say the same thing. There's good material in both, but James Clear quotes Dr. B.J. Fogg. B.J. does not need to quote James Clear. So foundational stuff is the piece that works for me, and yeah, you can keep on going from there.
That's such a great statement to really summarize the difference between the Tiny Habits book and the Atomic Habits book. And maybe I've shared this with you. James went through our 5-day program
Yes.
exactly like you did back in 2012. And that started his journey into studying and interacting with BJ about habits and habit formation. Because you've gone through the Tiny Habits certification training program, you've got a very in-depth training in tiny habits, the most in-depth training that there possibly is in the world right now in habit formation. So congratulations to you.
Well, thank you very much. It fits everywhere in life, and particularly when paired with the behavior model of BJ's that we'll probably talk about. But I love that and use that as a gateway into all my conversations with people.
Well, and Rick, I know you wear a lot of different hats, and you've shared with me that you use tiny habits in all arenas of your life. You and I come from the same religious background and still practice where we belong to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I know you currently are serving as a bishop in that capacity, which is a volunteer position. You also are still an educator. You're still coaching. Share with us some of the stories or experiences that you've had in different capacities and as you teach and guide people through using tiny habits in their lives.
Oh, thanks, Linda. That too is a piece. I would say to anyone that's thinking about this, no matter what avenue you are in your life currently, where you are in work, with your family, just about anything that you're doing, when you let tiny habits kind of percolate in the back of your head, it fits in all of those things. It all starts, like, to me, I categorize things inside 3 categories that I've named. Aspirations, which is certainly a term out of all of the leaders, all of the books, and BJ's included. So aspirations, things I aspire to be. And I love BJ's swarm of bees model to subsequently build from there. But aspirations are about things I want to be better at, I aspire to be better at, and then building out the path that way. Frustrations are things focused on me that I want to stop doing or move away from. So you might say they're the bad habits that you want to untangle and stop. And so when frustrations still can apply the entire tiny habits model to work your way out of. And some of it's reverse engineering against the formula that builds the habits. And so we come back to that behavior module. And then you alluded to it, what's referred to in the book as pearl habits. Those are habits that I find I embrace because they help me deal with the things that irritate me. So aspirations, frustrations, irritations. And irritations are entirely about not my behavior, my response to the behaviors of others or the things that come at me. Sometimes the news can irritate me. Sometimes this politician or that politician or whatever, anything they say can irritate me. Well, I can't change them, but I can change my reaction to the irritant. And so building tiny habits to better deal with those in all the different ways that you can build habits. But they still are basically, hey, after this, I will do this, and then I will celebrate. And it fits in every aspect of life. Any problem, any challenge you've got, you break it down to the tiny, you figure your way through, and critically, that component of, and then I will celebrate. That was even from the first habit, the Maui habit, the first habit I tried right after I heard the video, that very next morning when I stood up out of bed. And I always say it's when I stand up, not anything else. But when I stand up out of bed, I say out loud, today is going to be a great day. So saying it out loud and celebrating out loud with my beautiful wife of coming up here on 50 years, I think, getting close to that.
Wow.
Sleeping, that would not be kind. So I would still say it out loud, but it's just really quiet. Today is going to be a great day. And if Chana had somewhat woken up a little bit, there was a couple of times there where, she would kind of giggle, like, okay, there you go. But it didn't matter. And that whole piece of getting that celebration there, we just finished January. In fact, I said yesterday in church, let me be the first to thank you and welcome you to 11 months till New Year's. But anyway, but we make these resolutions and the biggest reason, and it's true in all of the literature, but the biggest reason that we don't achieve those New Year's resolutions is the time for celebrations too far away, and making it tiny brings the celebration right here. So from a church point of view, we want to read our scriptures every day. But people say, I'm going to read, let's just say, I'm going to read the Book of Mormon today. Well, in English, that's about 400 pages. In Japanese, that's about 740 pages. Okay, I'm going to read. That's my New Year's resolution. Well, when do you get to celebrate that? That's 400 some odd pages away. But if I'm going to read a verse every day or 2 verses every day, and I'm going to celebrate right after I read that, well, I get to celebrate. Like I texted a verse to all of my young men, and for our listeners, this is a group that's turning 16 or less than 18 years of age in this calendar year. They're in what we call the priest quorum. And I texted them and said, with a verse. And then I put a bit of a space below the verse. And I said, if you've read this, you have read a scripture every day of 2026. And sent it to him on January 1st. So you're on your way. There's your tiny habit for 2026. Celebrate, and away we go. So it's just imbued in life. It's as silly as this, an irritation habit. I golf with some very good golfers, and I'm not that good. I'm shooting around 82 or so, 82 to 84, which isn't bad, but it's not 10 strokes higher than them, let's just say. And sometimes very regularly, a few of them, if they miss what they think was an easy shot, to me, it would have been a great shot, and they just miss, and they just get very animated. And that sets me off. Well, it was throwing me off my game. And I realized, because I'd talked to him about like, hey, I was really awesome out to get it that close. Why are it didn't work. So I had to go with the irritation habit. And so I like the whole concept of songs. I love songs, and we've got a whole bunch of tiny habit songs that we can go to. But Bruce Hornsby and the Range has a song that in the chorus is, that's just the way it is. Some things will never change. And so prompt, after one of my golf teammates flips a gasket, I will sing out loud, but quietly, that's just the way it is. Some things will never change, and tap my hip to reset myself so that I'm not thinking about that when I'm taking my shot. Tiny habits.
Wow.
And then I'll celebrate.
Basically, Pearl habits / tiny habits used in that kind of a context. I think that's brilliant. And that's quite remarkable. And that goes back to another question that I had for you, a follow-up question from a comment you made earlier about celebration, and knowing that you've coached several different sporting teams and a lot of youth playing sports.
Mm-hmm.
And celebration is difficult for a lot of people to, number one, implement, or to, number two, understand. What are the parallels with what you see with athletes and how they excel and how they naturally celebrate, along with people that you work with in Tiny Habits? Are there lessons there, parallels there?
Well, I think there are. In football and working with high school students, let's say, for example, hey, you as a defensive back, and apologies to those listening who are like, okay, defensive back, I don't do football. You as a corner, whatever, you're covering a wide receiver who's going to try and catch the pass, and everyone can see you if the ball is thrown towards you. Everyone can see, because there goes the ball, the focus of 60,000 people in the stadium and X number of millions watching on TV is you and this receiver. And you make a great play and you knock the pass down. Okay, tiny habit. After I knock the pass down, I will celebrate. Okay, that's not quite the full recipe, but here's the piece. I've done this great thing. So the prompt is, I defended a pass. What's my habit? I will snap my wristband. And after I snap my wristband, I will celebrate by resetting my mind. The next play is the next play, because you will have a situation where you get beat for a play. Okay, that plays, I'm still going to snap my wrist because I'm going to reset and go. I've seen situations where you knock the pass down this play, and the very next play you get burned for the touchdown because you're still thinking about the previous play, or vice versa. I just got beat, and now I'm going to be down and depressed and thinking about getting beat instead of I'm going to get the next one. So both of those can be habits built and go from there.
I think that's really valuable for even us in life, is the reset, giving yourself the ability and teaching yourself the skill of reset through forming that as an automatic behavior, which we call a habit.
Yeah. That whole reset piece. And then, okay, what if you don't do your habit today? Whatever that habit was, like here came the prompt for it, getting out of bed, flushing the toilet, brushing my teeth, whatever. I know we use those simple ones because they're gateways to more complex pieces. But whatever it is, you didn't do the habit that day. Okay, well, what's your habit for reset? Like if I don't read a verse today, or I don't read a book, or I don't exercise today, does that mean that's it? No. One prompt is you wake up, the next day you wake up. So it's a new day. When we sleep, fascinating things happen with our body, but one of the things that happens is we don't actually have, if people are just listening, I'm patting this bald head of mine, but one of the big pieces that happens when we sleep is that our brain actually washes itself out. And sometimes we need to, and that's way no technical term explanation there, but that's what happens effectively. We just need to allow ourselves to have that tiny habit of every day as a reset. And so I didn't do it yesterday. I'm not destroyed by that. I'll just do it today and go. Now, if you can have things that will help you never to mess up, fine. But no one has a 365 streak on most anything. I am very proud of the fact that I am like 4 or 5 years. I haven't missed. Today is going to be a great day, but I've imbued that into the whole concept of stay awesome, and so it's just way natural fit. It's like putting clothes on. Today is going to be a great day.
Well, and as you know, that's my favorite habit as well, the Maui habit. Why is that your favorite habit, and how has it impacted your life?
I wonder often, would it have the same impact if I'd never been to Maui? I don't know, because sight unseen, you just don't know. I first went to Maui as a football coach to help coach an all-star team from Alberta in the summer, and we played some games against some teams in Maui, high school teams, and it was just an incredible experience, and it was very beautiful. So it fit in that context. But if you've never been to Maui, I always teach it with a nice picture of a sunset in Maui, and people have heard of it, and so it tends to fit. So find your happy place. If you've never been to Maui, it doesn't have to be called the Maui habit. It can be wherever you are happiest. But the habit isn't really connected to that. The words just fit. Today, it's a affirmation. And, I want to say, Linda, I have had lived experiences with this where I have taught this habit to 600 teenagers and their coaches in Edmonton, and invited them all after I taught it. It's like, okay, let's do this together. Everybody push away, get your chair clear. You got a celebration in your head. It's your celebration. You do you. But we're going to stand up out of our chair and pretend that's like standing up out of bed. And then you say out loud, today is going to be a great day, and then celebrate. And it about shook, because they're all athletes, highly motivated people, and I'm coming at them with a legitimate sports background that they could accept and understand. And they were in it. And even the coaches, the adults were in it. And it was massive, and my biggest regret in life is that I didn't have a camera to record it, but that didn't matter. But it was just awesome. And then I said the same thing to them. I say, anytime I share this habit with any group, I have had people say to me, oh, I don't think that works. I think that's silly. I've had people verbalize that, usually adults, not necessarily young adults. And I'm like, okay, that's fair. You're definitely welcome to have your thought. What I would like you to think just for a second about is, what if, instead of the last 3 years me saying this every morning, what if, and now I'm speaking to the 600 kids in this big ballroom, right? What if every morning when I got up out of bed, I said out loud, today is going to suck.
Well, some people do, Rick. Some people do.
Well, they do, but I want you to know that in that setting, and in pretty much every other setting that's had more than 15 people based on the size of the room or whatever, but in that specific setting, you could feel the intake of breath, and you could feel it physically, and they could feel it. And I said, did you feel that? And the kids are like, yeah. Like, I'm hearing kids not filtering themselves, like, holy crap. And, kind of stuff. They felt that. And I said, so we need that feeling not to be the one that sticks with us. So let's do this again, right? So we did it again. Just, okay, see, there you go. You felt the difference. And it amazes me. I've run into kids who have presented this to like a year, 2 years after. And they're like, hey, I still do the Maui habit. Thank you. All right. Did they apply the piece to it? I mean, reading a verse a day. I had a young man who at his, so I first taught it to him when he was 17, and he was like, I don't think I'm not a reader. And I'm like, just one verse a day. And when he was leaving to go on his mission down to California, I live up in Canada, but he shared with the congregation, I didn't ever think I was going to read the whole Book of Mormon. And Tiny Habits, the bishop just said just one verse, and taught me a little bit about Tiny Habits. I'm happy to stand here and tell you I finished it, because what's the best important teaching? Do the Tiny Habit. You're free and clear to do 3 verses, 4 verses, 5 verses, a page. But when you set the goal for way down here, 10 pages a day, and you've never even read a verse a day, when are you going to celebrate? And so he had read it. That's the key. These pieces they fit.
Well, and I like the fact that that as you shared, number one, you give them a way that they really can't fail, that any progress is progress forward, and give them permission to do just a little bit. I know for me, if it's like, oh no, I need to read 10 pages every day, whether it be in the Book of Mormon or the Bible or even some literature that I'm studying professionally, or when I break it down, just like what you've explained, like you have for your youth, it's doable for them.
Well, it's doable for me too. I think this is the piece, right? I love BJ's taught this as well. Hey, the goal is 3 push-ups or whatever your tiny habit is. That's your baseline. If you go past that, that's fine. You've already celebrated. You go past it, but you've achieved the goal. You've strengthened the neural response to winning. Yeah.
I know you like to work a lot with teenagers and a lot with youth. That's been your whole life work and service that you've done to your community religiously as well as in your community educationally. What have been some of the biggest transformations or changes that you've seen as you've worked with teenagers or youth? You've taught them tiny habits and they've applied it.
I didn't have tiny habits when I was up in Grand Prairie and teaching and principal of the high school and things of that nature. I came into it later in life. It was published later in life. What year is the book
The end of
first released?
2019 is when it was published. Yeah.
Yeah. See, so I'd even just retired from my central office position as an assistant superintendent after that. And now I was in a role where I was teaching teachers and providing professional development and things in that nature. And it immediately bridged into a wellness piece there. But I had an opportunity to work with what we called, eventually we came to the name SAIL, Southern Alberta Interscholastic Leadership Group. And it was student leaders from across 5 or 6 school districts here in Southern Alberta that we gathered those leaders together. And I actually do have a video of them doing the tiny habits of, today is going to be a great day. And usually the youth were only with us for 1 year. They were coming into their senior year, but we had some kids who were with us for more than a year. And as they would come back the next year, hey, are you teaching these guys? I've told these guys you're going to teach us about tiny habits this year. You're going to do that, so they had brought it into their life, which was critical to see that it was stuck with them. I loved being at a Costco and a kid from Fort McLeod coming up and saying, hey, Mr. Gilson. Well, actually, hey, Rick. We allowed first names in that setting. I wasn't used to that educator, but hey, Rick, I want to thank you for teaching me about tiny habits. I use it here, here, and here. And you're just like, cool. Right? You're giving them ways to deal with stuff that they want to do, want to stop doing, or better deal with the stuff that's driving them crazy. And I love the slide in my presentation for that is actually a pictograph. And then there's a guy driving a car, and then there's this, and I said, read this to me. And it's all pictures, and they say, oh, what drives you crazy? And I'm like, yeah, that's what we're dealing with here. Was these ones, and that's my very first Canva creation as an old man, right? Was that image. So, and it sticks with them, right? This is a sticky principle. Tiny habits is a sticky principle that you can see in all aspects of your life if you want to, and then it can help improve your relationships, your physical health. It literally spans the entire spectrum of the pillars of wellness.
Wow. I like how you put that. It spans the entire spectrum: physical wellness, emotional wellness, mental wellness, spiritual wellness. You're right. And you've used it in every context.
Yeah. Financial.
Oh, yeah.
Everything.
Financial.
If you go to Stanford University's on site, there's lots of different graphics that you can acquire about pillars of wellness. But when you look at all of those and you just think, okay, where could this fit? It can fit in the whole piece. So can it improve and give you control over your development, both in stopping, starting, in any aspect of your life, relationships, everything? Absolutely. Do you want to supplement that with additional reading and understandings? Yes. Everyone learning every day was our motto at my high school in Grand Prairie. And I kind of live by the notion of the more I know, I need to know more. Well, yeah, I've stopped, Linda, I've stopped saying I'm a lifelong learner. I actually shared this with a fellow this morning. I kind of believe I'm an eternal learner because I'm pretty sure I'm going to learn some stuff within minutes of passing away, which I'm in no hurry to do. But I will learn some things shortly thereafter that will add to my learning. Lifelong learning, passe. Be an eternal learner. There you go. And Tiny Habits feeds being an eternal learner.
Well, and I love that, Rick. I haven't really looked at it that way, but I love that simply because, as you're aware, in our religious beliefs, the only thing we take with us to the next life is our knowledge and our relationships. And so it makes sense that we would be an eternal.
Every affair of the heart goes with us forward. The head and the heart, right? The mind and heart, our soul That all goes forward. So all this knowledge we acquire now goes forward. All of our relationship memories go forward, good, bad, and otherwise, and we'll go from there. But they go forward every day right now. So that's kind of a easy principle to apply. And we got a heck of a lot to learn.
So obviously, you've immersed yourself in tiny habits. You've immersed teaching and coaching and guiding others to better their lives, learning the tiny habits method and the Pearl Habits method. I know you're a big advocate of the Pearl Habits method. What are some of your favorite Pearl Habits recipes? And let me explain a little bit to those that are listening that aren't familiar. Pearl Habits was derived from the tiny habits methodology. And like Rick had explained earlier, it's based off of irritants or frustrations and helping you learn how to cope with those to help you emerge on the other side better as opposed to bitter. How can we be better instead of bitter? Because there's so many life experiences that can cause us to be bitter and angry and just really hurt ourselves more than they'd hurt anybody else. It's more, internal. What are some of the Pearl habits that you've used to help you be better? You shared a little bit of it with me about some of the challenges you've had and how you've been able to rise above them using the tiny habits and Pearl Habits method.
Well, this is a very foundational piece. It is about, I think we can all feel a little bit better. We refer to it as Pearl Habits. And again, I'm thinking of the slide that I have. It certainly shows some pearls. And then I've got Jack Sparrow up in the corner too, and the black pearl from Pirates of the Caribbean. But, you use the irritation as a prompt. So whenever you catch yourself feeling that irritation, whatever it might be, you need to build a habit that will allow you to respond with it so it's not allowed to canker. And I have found some overlap where most of my Pearl Habits anyway, where I think back to circle of control and circle of influence and right back into Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And so I've woven those two teachings together in the building of Pearl Habits, like the entire piece of I can't control this person. I can really only control my response. Now, by controlling my response, I can see the behavior change on the person, right? Over time, if the person's going to stay with me, or I'm going to stay with the person, if there's going to be repeated pieces. But, it's for example, driving, when someone cuts you off. So there's something you didn't control. They cut you off. It happens. Even on our country little roads down here in southern Alberta, it can still happen. We have to go to the big metropolis of Lethbridge with its, 130,000 people. And that's the biggest center nearby. Calgary's got about 1 million. And yeah, when you go to Calgary, you can go crazy with the driving. It's just like, wow. But I love driving in Los Angeles. And part of it is a Pearl habit that's just like, after I get cut off, I will laugh and say, "Whoa, that was a close one," or things like that, where it's just I didn't get hit. I don't, I haven't got a Pearl habit for after I get hit because I've never been in a car accident.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, definitely, knock on wood, tap myself on the head there. But again, different teachings fill in, right? There's a book called Talking to Crazy, and it's quite a good book. But one of the very first stories is exactly this, where he cuts off a guy maybe 2-3 times on a Los Angeles freeway. And finally, the guy pulls ahead of him and drives him to the shoulder and cuts him off and makes him stop, and then gets out of his car and comes to get him. Like and the guy that gets out of the car to get him is a big guy, but he has in his head unconsciously a Pearl habit because he wrote the book before, right? But, and the experiences are before BJ's book came out, so he wouldn't have known about Pearl habits yet. But he rolls the window down, which was dangerous, and he just says to the guy, "Go ahead, just kill me."
What?
Yeah. And the guy is mad as heck when he's coming, but he's like, "Yeah, I deserve it. Whatever. Give me hit me, whatever it is. Go ahead." And I'm paraphrasing, but this is still the piece of it. And immediately the guy's like, "What?" And he's taken aback, and he's like, "Hey, buddy, it's not that bad. I just, you cut," and suddenly we're on a peace pattern, right? But his piece was, you don't, if someone's talking crazy to you or acting crazy to you, you talking crazy and acting crazy back
Yeah.
isn't going to help. So I will what? Seek a peacemaker position, or I will strive to listen better. A recent new Pearl habit is like asking, after I sense I'm on the verge of a debate argument, I will ask myself, what does winning look like? And so here's the piece, right? Like if Chana and I disagree on something, let's say we're having an argument and I was pushing to win the argument. What does winning look like in that situation? It looks like silence for a long time on the other side, from the other side.
That's not really,
Do I
it's
need
not a
that? Do
win.
I want that? Oh, what did I win? you know? And so these are the pieces for us. But it's very important. Not all pearls are perfect. This is kind of the piece of it. Even the pearls aren't perfect. And we had a chance to go to Tahiti, once in a lifetime kind of thing. My son had served his mission there, and we took him and his wife there. I bought a beautiful pearl necklace for my wife, just 3 pearls, but different colors. And I asked, it was a little bit, I said, hey, what are all these? And they were imperfect pearls that they just said, you can take a handful of them if you want. So I've got a jar with some black sand and these imperfect pearls in. And I'm like, look, pearl habits of themselves are dealing with irritations. Each oyster goes through 3 stages, from this size of pearl to this size of pearl to the biggest pearl they can make. And then they're done. That's it for that oyster. Can't make any more pearls. But these other ones that come out imperfect, the little plastic piece that they put in to make the perfect one had something else latched by it, so it created an imperfect pearl. Pearl habits in and of themselves, the focus is in you controlling your circle of control and building habits that reset you as quickly as possible, and that builds a resilience that you can then deal with the other pieces and go better. The last piece is just, hey, try to see that person like a pearl habit where it's, how does the Savior see this person? And that's a recent one just off of this Sunday's lesson that we talked about, seeing people and being, this person that's going crazy and seems to be just driving you crazy. Okay, but do you see what the Savior sees in this person? Look for that. And so it's not going to be perfect right away. It's a tiny bit of balm of Gilead did I borrow, right? But that's okay too. And that's another pearl habit, right? Just these little song pieces. I shared yesterday, we should all have a little bit of Bumblebee in us. You know, the Transformer? Bumblebee speaks to everybody. He's an Autobot. So Bumblebee is the little yellow car, Trans Am, I think it always was in the movies, but that can't talk. So it talks with little snippets of song and little snippets of soundtrack from movies. And so, having those kinds of pearl habits, after I feel like I'm not worth it, I will sing out loud, I am a child of God. That's all. And then move on, right? So it's just quick little resets, but that the Bumblebee grab little sound bites for shine, for celebration, is something that I really like.
Basically, pearl habits evolved from my ability to cope with a lot of challenges, or the coping mechanism that I used as I went through many life-changing challenges and using the tiny habits method. But I just learned a lot from you. So, and how you see it and how you've used it and your insights to that. So thank you for that.
You're most welcome, Linda. It always strikes me how short that section is in the book.
As you know, Rick, I am working on a Pearl Habits book and a Pearl Habits podcast.
Yeah.
It was such a new concept and principle when the book was being written that we didn't expand on it very much, but yet here again,
Yeah.
he's carved that out for it to be a full training, a full book in and of itself, and really be built out the way that it should be built out, and not to take away from the tiny habits method. It adds to the tiny habits method.
Yeah. I don't see them as
No,
separate
they're,
at all. That's, I think, the
yeah,
piece for me in our conversations with other coaches.
yeah,
I'm like, no, this is this, this is this, and this is this. All 3 are the whole package, and literally that's how I present it when I'm sharing tiny habits with educators or others. Is those 3 categories.
the aspirations,
And
frustrations, and irritations, those, and how tiny habits actually fits into every one of those categories. That's beautiful how you've put that together.
yep,
That's beautiful.
yeah, it works. People are able to hold on to it, and then away we go. And yeah, that's
Wow.
That's the piece of it. And then, you just fold in other pieces like Pearl habits to deal with what's called automatic
Mm-hmm.
negative thoughts. So after I get an automatic negative thought in my head, this is the work of Dr. Daniel,
Mm-hmm.
amen,
Yes.
right? So what's your Pearl habit? I'll ask myself, is it true? And so is it absolutely true? Okay, then how do I feel? Like when someone says, hey, you're and fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Is that true? Because if it's true, I've got to work. If it's not true, I don't have to work. I've got other things I need to do. I need to help them see that that's not true, or whatever the case may be, right? So you can build tiny habits to deal with those, which are resiliency habits, right? Starts as a Pearl habit, sure, because you're dealing with something that's knocking you down. But it's also a Pearl habit and a resiliency habit to come up. So all of those, like with kids who are like, I'm worthless. I don't know if you've had any children or grandchildren that have self-image concept challenges, and you're like, hey, let's see if there's some ways we can. It's a feeling that you have. How can we deal with that feeling? That someone says something and that prompts. They said something that prompts. And how can we choose to respond to that? What kind of tiny habits can we do? Because there's either 0 on a prompt or there's 1 in a math conversation, right? It's a 0 or 1. Everything else is on a scale. And so I just kind of love that whole concept.
Well, as we wrap up here, Rick, I love your wisdom. And talking about wisdom, so would you want our listeners to know as we're wrapping up here, or what could you share with them that would be really transformative for them?
I think number one, something that I heard a long time ago while riding my spin bike in my garage, watching a podcast interview, a Joe Rogan interview, actually. A fellow by the name of John Asraf was talking, and they were talking about change and improvement and things of that nature. And I'm pedaling my bike, and John Asraf says, babies are the only humans who like change. And I was like,
Wow.
whoa, what did he just say? And I wound it back. Like I stopped right then, sweat all over the place, and wrote this down. So it wasn't a very big sentence, but still I grabbed it. And then I texted my daughter up in Grand Prairie, Sarah, and she had just had our youngest grandchild, Lucas. And I said, hey, do you have a picture? Because immediately I'm thinking of presentation that ties to the end of my Tiny Habits training stuff. Do you have a picture of Lucas getting his diaper changed? Seems like an odd request. She sends me this picture, and he's in the little bassinet kind of thing, and he's a couple of months old at this point, when babies will giggle and smile when you smile at them and all the rest of that. But he's just had his diaper changed. And I kid you not, he has his hands behind his head and he's got the greatest smile on his face, like this is the best thing in the world. I just had my diaper changed. So I use that at the end of the presentation. Like, babies are the only humans who like change. For the rest of us, it's a little bit of work. And it doesn't matter if we're changing on aspirations, frustrations, or irritations. We're working on change. So it's not always easy. Sometimes it hurts. No matter which of the pillars of wellness you're trying to attend to in all of that, sometimes it hurts. So, it's hard sometimes to realize, when I say stuff like that, I need to not say that. I need to not use those words, especially to someone that I love. But really, do I need to use them even to a stranger? No, I need to not have that attitude. How do I do that? So, if you're striving to be awesome in all that you do, well, then, hey, embrace tiny habits. If you're striving to not be awesome in all that you do, well, you need tiny habits too.
Oh, wow. What a great summary, Rick. It's been so fun to talk with you. Those that are listening that want to get a hold of you or learn more from you, what's the best way for them to do that?
I have a pretty lucky, easy Gmail address. It's just rick.gilson@gmail.com. No numbers, no nothing else. That's easiest probably to go. That will never go away till I'm finished the journey.
Well, I hope you're still on the journey for a long time because we need you. You really are a great asset. Thank you so much for spending time with us today, Rick. Obviously, you're a very well-trained educator because you did a great job educating us today. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much, and take care and
Well, you
stay
too.
awesome.
Back at you.